Hello and welcome to another edition of Sree's Sunday New York Times Read Along. Our guest this week is Rashmee Roshan Lall, a journalist, teacher, and writer. She is the creator of the This Week Those Books newsletter and podcast, which connects the week's big international news story with the world of books. Our host, of course, is Sri Srinivasan. My name is Neil Parekh. I'm the executive producer and occasional guest host of the show. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and our Digimentors website. Please like, please comment, share, retweet, repost, all the things you do on social media to let folks know about this great show we're going to have today. We're going to be covering a lot of ground. And first, I want to give a quick shout out to everyone watching on replay. Thank you for taking the time to come back to this program. 8:30 a.m. Eastern, 5:30 Pacific may not be your best time, but we appreciate your support nonetheless. As I mentioned, we're going to be covering quite a bit of interesting content. The first is the This Week Those Books newsletter and podcast by our guest, Rashmee Roshan Lall. We'll also be talking about the Washington Post non-endorsement, which created a bit of a firestorm, and a number of people dropped their subscriptions to the Post. We'd be curious to see what your thoughts are on that. We certainly will share our opinions. New York Times for Kids. This is a special print-only, once-a-month special section that, through a special arrangement with the New York Times, we're allowed to share the PDF on our website. We'll share the link for that shortly, but we definitely want to check it out. And what we're going to do is, after the 10 o'clock hour, when we usually stop our show, I'm going to come on and do a special reading just of the New York Times for Kids. So hang on and wait for that. That'll be very special. We'll also be talking about a special section in the Saturday paper, If Trump Wins, that the New York Times put together. It certainly is worth reading and certainly scary if you really look into the details. And finally, for sports fans out there, we have the Friday World Series preview between the Yankees and Dodgers. I don't want any comments about how the series is going so far, but it's Yankees Dodgers, and this is the series I was looking forward to. We have a PDF of this special section on our website, thanks to the Times. So if you're interested, I definitely encourage you to check it out. And now, without further ado, let's bring on our host, Sri Srinivasan. Sri, good to see you.
Great to see you. It's super cold here. I'm wearing my Norwegian thermals. As you know, we get to do some great work with the Nobel Prizes, so I spend time in Scandinavia, so I'm counting on their thermals to get me through. It's not even that cold, but I took our dog Tara out for a walk this morning, the Beagle, and she was fine, but I was freezing, and it was only 47 degrees, which is well above freezing in Celsius as well as in Fahrenheit, but I was super cold. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Neil, for bringing us together on the New York Times Read Along. We love having people watch us on Sundays, 8:30 to 10 a.m. Eastern. We're live on Facebook, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and we are here so that you can learn with me as we talk about the news, as we talk about all the topics that are facing us right now: disinformation, misinformation, and so much more. This show is brought to you by our friends at Muckrack. Muckrack is the website that all of you who work in comms already know, and all journalists should know, because it's the best place to be a verified journalist. And in addition, if you're in the PR business, you want to connect with journalists, that's where you go. For journalists, all the accounts are free, so please check out muckrack.com. And if you'd like to be a sponsor, please join us and write to us, Sri@digimentors.group and Neil@digimentors.group. And Digimentors, of course, is our company where we do all kinds of things, including podcasts like this. If you would like a live show, please contact us. We do digital marketing, events and programs, PR. We do training and workshops. We also do event amplification. You have an event you'd like to make bigger than it is, contact us. Neil and I are going to be in Dubai for the Dubai Future Forum in November to make that an even bigger and even more important show. We also are doing my AI workshops. The topic that I've created is my non-scary guide to AI, and we're doing this in newsrooms, in offices, online, in person. I've been in 12 countries since May of 2023. So in 18 months, I've been in 12 countries teaching this. And you can see I used to have hair. You can also see computers used to look like this. And we also do, as basis of this, we also do things like AI scenario planning, AI strategy, AI policy. So if you want to talk about any of those things, please do get in touch with us, and we would be very grateful to have the opportunity to talk to you. We have, of course, so much to talk about, Neil, and one of the exciting things is that we have these PDFs that most people can't get anywhere but through us. So please go to digimentors.group, look for the New York Times read along, look for Rashmee's face and this episode, and there you will find multiple things, including if Donald Trump wins, that PDF. You'll also find, very important, the New York Times for Kids. That's all about the elections this year, and normally we have to take it off the website by noon Eastern, but we've gotten permission for it to stay through the election. So if you know anyone between 9 and 12, or someone who's going to be 9 in the next couple of years, you want to get this PDF. So wherever you are in the world, you get this free PDF that only goes to print subscribers. That's with our arrangement with the Times. We want to make sure that you have as much access as possible. And we have people watching from around the world. We want to say hi to them. Pradnya is watching from Silver Spring, Maryland. Welcome, Pradnya, former guest on the show. Shashi is watching from Potomac, Maryland, in the Washington area. They know how much is at stake with this election, so they're up and early. How about early Doug Levy watching from the Bay Area, where it's 5:30 in the morning? Also, former guest Jonathan Borstein is watching. Hi, Jonathan, from the East Village. Ken is watching from Iowa. Iowa is where a lot of this starts in the political cycle, as you know, with the caucuses and everything else. And now we're down to the last week. Blindian Project. Hi, Blindian Project. Everyone, check out blindian-project.com. It's about how Black and Brown communities come together and building an amazing community, as Jonah has done there. And Diana is also watching early in the San Francisco Bay Area. Hi, Diana. Thank you for waking up. Look at this. John Lakshmi is watching from Atlanta. And John, it is a print-only section, but we have permission to share the PDF from the editors and publishers of the New York Times for Kids. They've been on our show, and since then, we've done this every month. So, folks, the last month of the year, last Sunday of each month, we publish the links to the PDF. So you want to get that right now. Go to digimentors.group. Look for the New York Times Read Along tab. Look for Rashmee Roshan Lall's episode, and you'll be able to get it. Paula, longtime partner and friend of this show, producer of the show, is watching from Tallahassee, another important place right now in the elections. So much going on. Kaveri Madhavan is here. Kaveri is our Ireland friend. She is a writer who has been on the show, and she's had enormous success with her latest book. Please check it out. And Stefan's watching, saying happy fall Sunday morning to the New York Times Read Along family. And come visit us. Last night I was swimming in our outdoor pool. We have warmth here. Bring Tara in the Bay Area. I've got to say I'm suspicious of that because I'm always cold when I'm in the Bay Area. So Diana, I do believe you, but I don't believe you. And Diane is watching in Margate, New Jersey. Folks, we want you to tag your friends right now. Tell them that this show is live. They can watch it live or later on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Twitter, of course. So just find me, and then you'll find the account, and you'll be able to share this with your friends and family. So everybody, please do that right now, and they can then watch it live or later. We have so much to talk about. I just wanted to show you, this is actually yesterday's front page. If Donald Trump wins, He's ready to radically reshape American government from the moment he regains the White House, is the headline there. And this is the special section that you can get if Donald Trump wins. What else is in the paper? Fine arts and exhibits. Some of you know I used to be the chief digital officer of the Met, and this was a very important section because this is previewing what is coming up in arts and exhibitions around New York and elsewhere. So we used to pay very close attention to this. And here is the New York Times for children, for kids, Election Day, your guide to the big day with election night bingo. So if you have anyone in your family who is between 9 and 14 or going to be between 9 and 14, you want to download the PDF, print it out, give it to them, or just circulate it in your school so that they can get it. It'll be live through Election Day. The book review cover, we're going to talk a lot about books because we've got, you can see I'm a bibliophile, but you have no idea how much Rashmee knows about books and how she has made a wonderful podcast and newsletter about that. It's called This Week, Those Books. Please take a look on Substack and find it because you will want to subscribe to it. And the book review is Trouble on the Mountain in the Empusium, a new novel by Nobel laureate Olga Tokarzuk. Guests on a rustic retreat face a dark and cryptic threat. And the Arts and Leisure cover is Seth Meyers, who it says has a little wild side, and he's one of the late night comedians here. I found these people, no one knew them outside America, but in the internet age, in the YouTube age, so many folks around the world watch the clips from these late night shows. The Metropolitan cover, only available to print subscribers in the tri-state area, that's why we show it when we can, is about a WNYC radio host who got her words back. After a crisis, brain surgery put WNYC's Allison Stewart on the air again, and she is fantastic, and I'm glad she is okay. We're going to get to the front page in just a moment, and then we're going to bring in Rashmee. The Sunday business cover is, let's see here, the prisoner pipeline. This is one of the biggest problems in the United States. You know that we have in America 5% of the world's population. We have 20 to 25% of the world's prisoners. So when Americans tell you about American exceptionalism, that's one of those things. Same with COVID, right? 5% of the world's population, 20 to 25% of the world's COVID deaths happened in America. A lot of that is connected about how American society is structured and what are the incentives that are created in this country. And the Sunday opinion cover is Donald Trump says he will prosecute his enemies, order mass deportations, use soldiers against citizens, abandon allies, play politics with disasters. Believe him. A lot of good people, including my friends, will tell me, oh, he's not serious about that. After all, he didn't put Hillary Clinton behind bars, so he used to say, lock her up. He didn't do that. Yes, he didn't do that. But if he could have, he would. And things have changed from 2016 to now. What are the things that have changed? Number one, he will have only loyalists around him. All the people who were fighting and deflecting and misdirecting him, not following his orders, they're all gone. They will not be in the room. So he'll get to do what he wants. The Supreme Court is now firmly in his pocket. So he has blank check to do whatever he wants. And remember, in 2016, 2020, the Supreme Court had not ruled that that a president can be lawless. He has now been given that blank check by the Supreme Court. I loved one of the memes I saw. It said, Donald Trump is lawless. Kamala Harris has to be flawless. This is the problem, that folks who are supporting Donald Trump, they don't care what we say. They don't care what he says, right? When he admires Hitler's generals, it's not something the media made up. It's something that he is quoted having said that by his own team, his own staff. That's the problem. And Pradnya says, wow, so tell us what you think. I have to say that I was in 2016. I woke up 2016 with Hillary having lost the election, having to tell my daughter, who had gone to bed thinking Hillary's going to win, and I had to tell her that Hillary didn't win. And I don't want that moment again, where I felt in 2016 there was nothing I could do because I was a journalist and only working in this way. Now I consider myself an opinion journalist, a commentator. That is a very valid form of journalism, as you can see in the New York Times. And therefore, I am not standing on the sidelines, and we're covering this election as much as we can. And that's going to help me. Even if it doesn't make a difference in the world, it makes a difference to me. We'll look at one more cover, and this is the Sunday Styles cover is Schiaparelli's King of Couture. Daniel Roseberry, the CDFA's International Designer of the Year, knows how to navigate the attention economy, and that certainly will get your attention. Look at that. Very cool. So with that, I think we are ready. Neil, hi.
Yeah, we're almost ready to bring on Rashmee. I wanted to say a quick hello to a few folks who have joined us. Tim Sohn is watching from Pennsylvania. Tim, great to have you. Amy McIntyre, another West Coast person waking up early to watch us from Washington State in America's last bellwether county. So thank you, Amy. And of course, I want to make sure we say hi to Jonathan. We say my art schedule already includes the Siena and Mexican poster show at the Met and the Impressionist show in DC. But Sri Shirsti is watching from Spain. 2 exciting days for the world as the U.S. election is approaching. Fingers crossed. Shirsti, of course, is the head of the Nobel Peace Center, which you referenced earlier, where you got your fleece and your warm clothes.
Yes.
So Shirsti, thank you so much for joining us. We
I
appreciate that.
I want to say thank you. She and her team at the Nobel Peace Center bring us in every year to help with the Nobel Peace Conference. And it's so much fun, such meaningful work. And we're already planning next year where I'll be digital co-host and Neil and team will be working hand in hand with the Nobel Peace Center team. Folks, if you get to Oslo, the Nobel Peace Center has to be on your must-visit list. It is an amazing, inspiring place. And this year's winners, as you know, are folks who in Japan who are fighting to make a difference and abolish nuclear weapons. These are victims of the United States and its atomic work, atomic bombs in 1945. So we're just talking about that. And thank you, Jesti, for watching, and thank you everybody for watching. Tag a friend right now on the platform you're on. They can watch us live or later, or send them a YouTube link and they can watch us live or later. We're so happy to have you. Naomi is watching from the Upper West Side, already voted. Yay, that's so important to get that early vote in. Thank you very much,
Dr.
Neil.
Tachi from Fort Lauderdale.
Yes.
And
yes.
Jenny Lynn Sheridan. Hello, I'm a Californian, but visiting Philly this weekend. I don't recognize Jenny's name. Sri, if you know Jenny, it might be a first-time viewer or at least a first-time commenter. But Jenny, thank you for joining us. And finally, Sri, I want to get in a special hello to my mom watching from Hastings on Hudson, New York. Mom, I promise that after the show is over, I'll make sure to wish Amy a happy birthday today because it's my sister's birthday. She's in Washington State as well. So thank you very much. And Diane, the last comment, vote blue, early voting has begun. We are making calls to undecided with local Margate, New Jersey Democratic Club, already voted with the mail-in ballot. That's great. Sri, let's go ahead and bring on our guest, Rashmee Roshan Lall, a journalist, teacher, and writer. She's the creator of This Week, Those Books, which is an incredible newsletter and podcast. Let's turn it over to Sri.
Hi, Rashmee.
Hi.
How are you? Thank you for waiting patiently. I know that you were spending part of that time at least telling your friends that you're on the show. And one of the things that you have learned better than most journalists I know is that journalism isn't just about having great content. You've got to tell people, and you do that so well. How did you become someone who understood that the old way of journalism doesn't work? Just putting out the stuff isn't enough. You've got to reach people.
Well, since you and I actually come from the same part of the world, Sri, and we started in what is now really dead tree media, and still consider that, newspapers. It is tempting. It was definitely a temptation to just stay within those confines. But I think I was very lucky because I moved from newspapers to the BBC World Service. So I began to understand the world of broadcast journalism. Particularly, first I was writing for radio and broadcasting on it, and then I started to present a news and current affairs double-headed program. It was the BBC's flagship program. It's called The World Today. And that really told me a little bit about the different kinds of journalism that we had to engage in. And I moved from there to another form of journalism, digital journalism. So, with quartz and so forth, what happened was it really expanded my worldview of journalism. And that really taught me about SEO, the importance of clicks, the importance of the right things to click on. And we shouldn't deride the fact that we need to catch people's attention. Um, so that's what I teach, that's what I practice, and I live that life.
And you've done that so well. So I wish more journalists would be doing that, and I hope they will inspire you. You're coming to us from London. We are grateful to have you here. But since you did mention our early days, I should tell everyone that we've known each other since I was 20. I turn 54 tomorrow,
Oh,
and I have changed. Rashmi has not changed. Unfortunately, I don't have a photo of
that's
two of us together from 30 years ago, 3.5 decades ago, but I do have a photo of what I looked like when she knew me. And so we're going to put that photo up in just a second so that you can see that I have changed just a little bit in the time since we had. Let's see, here you go. Look at that.
You're as charming as always. That light in your eyes, okay?
Yeah, the light in my eyes, and I've just a lot more light all over here. More space for halos. And I love that jacket. I used to wear it all the time. And Delhi does get cold, as you know. There's not much indoor regular heating, so you're always cold. And so when people have seen this photo, they say, why did you wear this jacket? I love this Ferrari jacket. I knew I'd never own a Ferrari, but I could own this Ferrari jacket, which was a gift from my dad and mom. So I was very happy with it. And I wore it all the time. And you and our friends at the Sunday Observer, who were my bosses, took an interest in this kid. That's, as you can see, I was a kid who wanted more than anything else to do journalism and to work for newspapers. And you were very kind, Rashmi, and you were very patient as I learned the ropes. And you and others taught me so much, things that I still carry with me today. We worked for a great journalist named Chandan Mitra,
Yes,
and who unfortunately has passed away.
yes,
And he changed my life as he changed so many of our lives. And this is my moment, Rashmi, when I always say, thank a mentor when you can. Otherwise, it becomes too late. So everyone, take a moment, take out your phone. Just anyone in your life who has been a mentor or mentor-like figure to you, just say hi, just saying hello, thank you. You don't need a long text. You don't need to do anything. I would give anything, Rashmi, to say hello to Chandan one more time. We had lost touch over the last couple of years, and I
yes.
will regret that always. So don't regret it, folks. Please connect with your mentors now when they're still with us.
Yes, absolutely. Shri, you and I are at risk of falling into a kind of mutual admiration club, because it was really very good to work with you and to see what you have created, informing people about the potential for each development to be taken to the nth point in terms of storytelling, because that's what we're really about. And if you permit me, I do want to tell you one small story, because you mentioned telling your daughter the morning after the election in 2016 that Hillary Clinton had lost. Well, my daughter, who lives in DC, she rang me. I was heading off to university. I was doing my PhD at the time. And she rang me and she was in tears. And she said that she's a little bit older than your daughter, Shri. And she said that, look, this has happened. And I said to her, because I was doing my PhD, which I was studying a lot about Plato at the time, and I was telling her about how Plato, in his in the eighth book of the Republic, said that it goes like this: it goes from oligarchy to democracy to tyranny, and how it is important to make the argument again and again. So I do feel that we are at risk of getting too subsumed by despair. If we know what is the right thing, even if there isn't success at a certain moment, the desired liberal values are not, they do not receive the support of enough people, we should make the argument again and again. That's what I just wanted to say because, and thank you for giving me the forum to say it.
You are so right, and such calming words, and at the same time a call to arms that we should be ready to speak up,
Yes,
to show up. But it isn't over, and that's the
it
important
isn't
thing. Anybody who says that the election's over, that Trump has won, is wrong. Every
wrong.
single poll tells us it's super close. Two things that I think about, Rashmi. First is that we saw with elections around the world, we expect, as you know, there are 63 elections this year. And in
Mhm.
multiple places, the elections have not turned out the way the pundits, the polls, and the media has said will turn out. So that's one. Second is on this weekend in 2012, Mitt Romney was ahead of Barack Obama.
That's right.
And just by the slightest bit. And as you know, there was never a President Romney. And I would not have wanted a President Romney because of what he represented. But compared to where we are today, we're in a very different place. And that's why this very important story in the New York Times, if Donald Trump wins, and we
Mhm.
have a PDF of this, they've put it together in this very uh, in-depth what will happen if Trump wins. And these are all the things that he has said he will do in his own words. He has told us he will do this. Maya Angelou had a great saying, if believe people when they tell you who they are. You should give people the benefit of the doubt, but you also know the saying, right? If your mother says she loves you, check it out. Trust but verify. And we have experienced this. We saw in 2016 what happened and where we went. All the people who said don't worry ended up understanding that that was the case. So why he would be better now is certainly not clear. So we have a lot to talk about, Rashmi. Let's talk first about your brilliant newsletter and podcast. And we're going to show the website so we can talk about that a little bit. But please tell us about this week, those books.
But these are very kind words, but it's a really small little concept. It was just this. It arose from my two passions. I'm a news junkie, and I'm a inveterate book reader. I read books all the time. So I wanted to unite the two because of something that we have been talking a lot about, both as journalists and as university teachers, as lecturers, the lack of media literacy. It's a big thing in the UK. I think it's a big thing in the US. It's funnily in the Western world. I don't want to make a sweeping generalization, but I think there is sometimes a sense that while there is great access to information, it is the white noise of information rather than the connective tissue that is put in there as well to sort of explain why you should know that copper prices are up or down, or lithium, Nigeria saying that we're going to have a lithium or uranium mine, why it matters. Why does it matter to you where you are? So the connective to join it all up. And that's why I started this week, the world's biggest international news story. What are the best books that give us context about it? So, one nonfiction book and maybe a fiction book, because it will help give you that other world, the other window into that issue. And I give you the summary, I give you the quotes. You don't even have to read the book. So it's actually a cheat sheet in a sense. But also, I hope it does provide occasionally something that you would have to look quite hard to find, or you'd have to put it together if you even had the time to do. It takes only about 5 minutes to read. And then we have either a conversation or a read along podcast that generally does not last longer than 5 minutes. This time it went over a little bit. So it was 8 minutes. We have a lot of people reading it in information poor places. And I don't want to call out anybody, but think of a place that you think of as, okay, it's remote. I would like to go there, but I don't know when I'll have 36 hours to travel to and from. We have people in those places, and of course in the US, UK, Europe, and so on, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and all that. But in lots of countries, so more than 110 countries, and we have subscribers, a lot of subscribers. Not everyone reads it, and not everyone reads every issue, but a fair number do. Uh, Enough for me to.
Never enough. I'm so glad you're able to talk about it. Let's pick one of these stories. Let's look at, if we can, Neil. Let's look at the story around what happened in the elections coming up. You've done several things about Trump. So let's go. Let's see here. Climate denial. Let's look at that. So pick anyone, Neil, and then let's go in. So talk about how you were able to frame this, and you use that novel to do it.
So, well, there was so much happening on climate denialism, election, that I wanted to. We get tired of talking about this, don't we? Every day, and readers and listeners on the radio and television viewers, they get quite tired of hearing about, Hurricane Helene, Milton, another one in the Philippines, something else happening somewhere else. And it's hard to keep up with all of this. At the same time, we are having these terrible, um, but it's really a crisis of responsibility with people like Donald Trump, with people who would be in very responsible positions, actually saying it doesn't matter. You're gonna, you're gonna have a beachfront property, more beachfront properties, if climate change and global warming is allowed to continue the pace. So what I was thinking of was the best book that spoke to me so deeply. There are a lot of them, but Jessie Greengrass, she's an English writer, her book is, I would challenge anyone to read it and not come away thinking about it constantly. It is a beautiful book. It's a novel. You should read it because it actually describes the world that we live in now. That's the issue. And then it takes it forward to where, things have already changed. And then, of course, there's Amitav Ghosh, who also lives in New York, Shri, so I'm sure you know him well.
Yes.
I don't know him. I just admire his writing enormously and his moral clarity, I think. So The Great Derangement, a non-fiction examination of the fact that things have already gone too far, in a sense, and just laying it out that when the waters rise, will future generations say, where were you at the time? I think it is a masterpiece of a book. But the fiction, if you ask me to choose, it's very hard to choose. But if you ask me to choose, I would say go with The High House because it just brings it into your living room, really.
It's beautiful, folks. That's Rashmee Roshan Lall. I'm Sri Srinivasan. She's in London. I'm in New York. And we're talking on the New York Times Read Along, where we read the New York Times and talk about news, fighting information, misinformation. But we also do other newspapers. We've done things like the Washington Post, at the home of the deputy editor of the Washington Post, the Toronto Globe and Mail, Khaleej Times in Dubai. So we've done a lot of these. And she produces and is a creator of This Week, Those Books. And what I wanted to ask Rashmi is that in a world where it's all about TikTok and Instagram and all of these short form content, what you have done is find a way to take the longest form content and make it accessible, make it digestible by folks who don't have a lot of time. And what is your sense of what others who have long form content, what they can do? What have you learned about how they can think about sharing their content and being relevant in this age of TikTok?
Well, I don't think one should go very far from where your instincts are. So you're always best doing what you know, what you love. but do it in as accessible way as possible. And I would just like to, in this context, I don't know if people read I know everyone doesn't actually subscribe to the Financial Times, but I would like to call out a particular feature that they have. It's called Sketchy Politics. And at my university the other day, I got the two creators of Sketchy Politics, Robert Shrimsley and Miranda Green, to come down and speak to our students, our media comms and journalism students, and everybody else, members of the public, journalists, and so on. What they do is, it's really a deep political analysis that they put on video, and they draw. So whatever character they're talking about, if it's Keir Starmer, they'll put a little cutout of his face there, and then they'll draw clouds or whatever they're trying to indicate, and then they talk about it. It's a fascinating way to get younger people, nerds, anybody, older people, to engage with a very deep political argument, but you're doing it visually, with drawing. It's various kinds of learning: visual, auditory, kinesthetic in a sense as well. Every sort of learning is possible through that. Yes, that there you go. It is amazing. And they had come down, they were telling us about it, how they thought of it. And they do it week after week, and it has great success. So I recommend just staying with what you love, staying with what you know how to do, but trying to reach the broadest number of people. But there you go. You can see that.
You did exactly that. That's
Yeah.
great. So everyone check out at Green Miranda and at Robert Shrimsley, and this great way of connecting with the audience. And there you go, the stormy weather that Sunak is facing. Okay, let's talk for a moment about British politics. Where are things today? What should an American audience know about what has happened in England and the United Kingdom that we should know?
Okay, well, the first thing I want to say, because you were talking about your Norwegian woolies, is you can see I'm just wearing a little cotton sweater,
Okay.
a little cardigan. And I was out on the street this morning with our local litter pick. It is so warm. It is nearly the end of October, and it is so warm and bright and sunny. And when people say here that the weather is so beautiful, I say sadly, because it shouldn't be like this. So I think I really fear for where we are headed, but let us not take too much of a doom laden tone. Where are we with British politics? I think everyone's fearing the October 30th budget, which is going to bring changes. But I think, in the context of our American listeners and viewers, particularly, I think what's good perhaps for Americans to know is how we continue to be little poodles, um, you know, watching for a scrap to fall from the American table. And so Donald Trump's threat, well, not threat, actually, he did go and file a legal complaint with the Federal Elections Commission against the governing Labour Party of Britain, because its 100 of its activists were in the United States campaigning, knocking on doors, and so on for Kamala Harris. So, people were really are concerned about what is going to happen come November 5 or November 8 or November 15th, whenever we know the results of the US election. So I think that is the biggest topic of conversation right now. It continues.
Thank you. Folks, we're going to be reading the New York Times. We're going to be talking about news and information and misinformation with Rashmee Roshan Lall. Please tell us where you're watching from. Please post your comments. We would love to share with Rashmee and with our audience what you're up to. How's your Sunday? Have you voted already if you're in the States? Or if you're watching from the country of Georgia, they just had their elections. Japan is voting today. So there's so much going on around the world, and we should all be paying attention. Here's Diana says, I don't vote until election day so that I can bring my small kids and make it a big deal. I want them to know how much it means to vote. We make it as big as a birthday celebration. We're heading to a watch party on November 5th. My guess is my kids will, once again, be the only kids there. I encourage all to involve your kids in the election process. even when they are small. And I would say if you have to vote by mail, you can make that also a big thing. I remember, Diana, doing that with my kids for the census. The fact that the census mattered, so we made a big deal and we took photos and videos of them filling out the
Yes.
census form and then putting it in the mail. So I love that you do that in person, but you can also do it online, or in voting early or voting via mail. And this is a good opportunity for to tell you that the New York Times for Kids, which is a section that is aimed at like 9 to 14-year-olds, depending how precocious your kids are. And it's a brilliant section. Once a month they make it, and usually they give us. It's only available to print subscribers, and they give us a version that we can put the PDF on our website, digimentors.group. Everybody, please go there, look for the New York Times Read Along, look for Rashmee's smiling face, and click there. You will get the PDF. And the PDF is so well done. And Neil, at 10 a.m., when we're done with the show in about an hour, we'll be doing a special read along of this so that you can really understand what the New York Times is doing. And Rashmee was there when we were doing at the Sunday Observer, the newspaper where we both work. She was working the politics desk. I was an opinion and other things, and I was working for what we would today call the young adult section of the news that we created. It was called New Generation. And I had so much fun. I learned so much. So this is aimed at children. That was aimed more at college kids. And it was a life highlight. I like to tell people to use the hashtag life highlight so people know what are the things that were important to you. And this is certainly one of those things that I will never forget. So get people involved in the news early and send this to your school, send it to your friends, wherever you are in the world. You can get this as a PDF only right now on the digimentors.group website, digimentors.group website. Look for the New York Times Read Along button and then click on Rashmee's face and you will see the story there, the PDF there. Rashmee, how do you feel about reaching out to truly young kids?
In fact, I wanted to ask you. I was very impressed by what Diana was saying about making it such an event for children to vote and to make civic occasions like that, like you were saying, the census. To make civic occasions like voting, the census, and so on into big occasions. It underlines the importance of organizing as a community. That is what government is. And it actually takes us away from this government is bad narrative that is pursued increasingly in so many parts of the world, and sadly in the United States too, with some success. So I definitely think to reach out to children, and what you were just showing us, the New York Times
For
election
kids,
special.
yeah. Yeah, for kids.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I did want to actually ask you a question about that,
Sure.
Shri, since you worked on the New Generation section of the Sunday Observer. We used to have something like that in the Times of India as well. And it was called Times in Education, I think. And their concept also was that if you catch them young, they will be lifelong readers of the Times of India. And I noticed that the Financial Times does that. They offer free subscriptions to all our students. So they're all signed up. We tell them to. But I just wondered, do you feel that the age group that you were catering to, which was, I think, teenagers,
Yes.
and the age group that the New York Times is now catering to, the gap has narrowed in the understanding of young people? I mean, they have become closer together, or I don't know. What do you think?
No, that's such a great observation. I agree that we have seen that because of technology, for the most part, that they're exposed to more
Yeah.
serious themes in their lives than ever before, at a younger age. And because everything saturates our airwaves and on social media, it also results in more mental health issues and loneliness, everything else that has also come with it. But that gap, as you said, that, I wonder if today we were starting New Generation, we were working at a paper in India, we wouldn't aim a little, even expand that a little bit, rather than doing just the teenagers. By the way, one of the things that was so special about working at the New Generation, which is, for those of you who just joined us, Rashmee and I know each other for 35 years. She was one of my bosses at the Sunday Observer. I had multiple roles that I played as a basically an intern. One of them was to proofread the newspaper and proofread, and she was, we would be line by hand proofreading what was, of course, desktop publishing, but we would do that. And then we also ran something called New Generation. By the way, this is how I used to look when Rashmee met me. She looks the same, and I have changed dramatically. In the 35 years, I've been kinder to one of us, as you can see. But more importantly, what I would say is that it helped connect people, not just in the big cities, but in the small towns of India, who were able to get advice and talk to us and read about pop culture. This is before the satellite revolution that took over India and so many other things. And it was very heartening to get these letters and postcards from our readers, who would be in second and third tier towns in India, and we're just happy to have something aimed at them. There was, of course, other kinds of content, including much more serious things, but we were very proud of that. And our dear departed friend Chandan Mitra, who was among the most serious journalists in the
Yes.
world, he understood the value of letting us put out a news section. It was a tabloid size section, where we would talk about things like Asterix comics and
Yes.
talk about music and all of that. And we had an advice column. In India, as you may recall, the relationship between the sexes wasn't as open as it is now. There's still a lot of issues, as there are anywhere in the world, but we'd get these letters from someone saying, I'm 14, I'm in love with my neighbor, she's fantastic, I don't know her name, but I'm in love with her. What should I do? These kinds, because in part Bollywood encouraged that kind of young love. They saw that, but they didn't have places to ask questions. So our friends Malini and Sona and I and Manika would answer those questions and give them. I was in no position to give any advice, but it was so much fun to do that, and it was so meaningful when we were able to do that. And an editor came in, a new editor came in and kind of killed that section. And our friend Chandan wrote this beautiful line about he was quoting Pablo Neruda, and he said, tonight I write the saddest lines, saying goodbye to new
Mm.
generation. So I have experienced, as many journalists have, the whims of new editors and even old editors who come in and then change things that are even working, that are successful. People want to change. So that's what we're experiencing. As you know, in the United States, more than 25,000 journalists have lost their jobs in the last couple of decades. Imagine in England, if 25,000 journalists lost their jobs, there'd be riots on the streets.
No,
Here,
no,
it's
but
considered,
it's happening here too.
but
It's happening.
not that scale though. I don't think, not
No,
yet,
because
because they.
it's a smaller country. But I personally, actually, I mean, because I've worked for very large papers and very small papers, big outlets, small outlets in different mediums. I don't take the pace of change as so dispiriting, in the sense of, I think there should be a shake-up sometimes.
Sure.
Because what happens is, then you shake the can a bit and you see what is the absolute essential, what sediment is left, and you make something new out of that. So sometimes that energy can bring something new. It's not always a success. I agree with you on that too. But yeah.
But I love your optimism on so many fronts, folks. That's Rashmee Roshan Lall. This is the Sunday New York Times Read Along. We're going to switch to reading the paper. And how we do this is I will show folks the newspaper, and then we'll pick out stories. And then as I comment, she's welcome to jump in on things that she's interested in. And I know, has takes on everything.
On
But the
every
things, but the things that really matter to her, she'll jump in. And then that way you get takes of two people, this time from London and me from New York. We do this every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, the Sunday New York Times Read Along. And I'm going to turn on our New York Times camera here so that you can see the New York Times right there. And we will blow that up so that you can see it properly. And we will talk about the paper. There's a lot to do. We don't actually read the entire newspaper. It's kind of a browse the newspaper with us opportunity. So I'm so glad that you are all here. Thank you so much. Please tag your friends, tell them. By the way, if you're wondering why this is where they put our home address, and I didn't want to publish our home address on the show. So here is Israel's shadow war. It enters a new era of strife. First acknowledged forays into Iran. Tehran's muted reply eases some fears, and this is more yesterday in Tehran. This billboard is threatening Israel, but most of the Iranian institutions are projected a sense of normality instead of saying, that things are bad. That's how they have played it. Let's keep going. Ballot power of abortion will be tested. Support for measures doesn't ensure votes for Democrats. And we have seen, however, in every special election, the midterms, it did make a difference. So it may or may not make a difference this year, but we will see. People are fired up. Harris keeps equity efforts under radar. They are, she's doing what she can, I guess, with the elections. And
That is a very interesting story, though, Shri.
please tell us. Yeah.
Well, actually, I mean, the the headline is a little bit. I read it in great detail. The headline is perhaps not as snappy as it could be, because what it's not really saying is what the story says, which is that Kamala Harris, throughout her time as a senator, as a uh, as the vice president as well, she has constantly focused on issues to do with equity or equality or an equal lens for women, for racial minorities, for other minorities. And so it's not a put on act when she says that I want to give black men, I want to give them this, I want to do. She is focused on community banks, for example. But she is not fighting this election on that basis. And the reason she's not doing it, which they haven't actually said in the story, is that it doesn't play well. You shouldn't, as a woman or as a person of color, actually draw too much attention to that. It might offend too many people. So, actually, there is a sad kernel in there. And I feel quite sad to read that story, though I think it deserves a lot of attention.
The Mary C. Curtis, dear friend of the show, multi-time guest, and someone who helped me cover the 2020 elections together. She says, in the swing state of North Carolina, my husband and I vote on election day in memory of my mom, who was an elections poll supervisor in Maryland. Covered Barack Obama in Charlotte Friday, wondering what effect Hurricane Helene will have on voting in Western North Carolina. Lots of rural counties, but also Asheville and Boone, Democratic areas. Mary, thank you for watching, and we will be in touch. Jay is watching from the DMV. The DMV is the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And Ron Thomas is watching from Dubai, headed to Singapore for a week. He always tunes in. He always shares, and he's a great supporter, former guest on the show. He, I believe, was the last guest that we were able to have in my home doing this read along before the pandemic and the lockdown. Lots of great comments coming in. Folks, tell us how your Sunday is going. Tell us what you're doing. Dr. Tachi says, I did a mail-in ballot, but dropped it off during early voting. It was a drive-through, so easy. Folks, it is easy to vote. Please vote. Tell your friends. Please convince someone who is sitting on the sidelines that this is an important election. And check out Dr. Tachi's podcast. It's so good. Let's keep going. The world's fountains of youth spout some questionable data. So I didn't know what the story was until I read it. This is about the so-called blue zones, parts of the world where their diet and their habits are making people so young. But it's questioning the data that people are using to make these conclusions. How are you placed with blue zones and the blue zone diet and things like that?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Oh, I mean, I eat a lot of blueberries anyway, and yeah, I eat a lot of quinoa and bulgur and spelt, and so you've alluded several times to the fact that I haven't changed at all, which was just because you're very charming and very kind. But that's not true. But I do think it is really important to have a blue zone diet, if that's what they call it now. Yeah.
Yeah, and that matters because how people eat, the food we grow, where it comes from. All of that has an impact on the planet, and that's a climate change story as well. We're not going to talk a lot about baseball on the show, even though our executive producer is a big baseball fan, and he will like this headline, even though the Dodgers are playing the Yankees and the Dodgers are leading 2-0. It's a best of seven, so a couple more games. There is a Japanese baseball player who's gotten the biggest contract in American baseball history, and his name is Shohei Ohtani. And his Ruthian feats, Ruth is Babe Ruth, the most famous player in baseball in history. His feats can't coax Japanese Yankees fans to turn Dodger blue. I'm surprised about that. This is if the most famous player in baseball happened to be Indian American, a lot of people would switch to being fans of that team, but he hasn't done that yet. And Neil's putting "Go Yankees, please win a couple of games." By the way, the second highest or the highest pitching contract, which is another position in baseball, also has gone to a Japanese player in Los Angeles with the Dodgers. Let's keep going here. And Halloween, how big is? Here's a special PDF that you can find in the New York Times read along section of digimentors.group. So multiple reasons to go to digimentors.group. You can get the New York Times for kids. You can get If Trump Wins, the PDF of that, and the baseball preview. No matter where you live in the world, this is the only place that the New York Times gives out these PDFs. So please go to digimentors.group and look for the New York Times read along button. I wanted to ask about Halloween and what kind of deal it is there in the UK.
I mean, just like it is everywhere in the world. I mean, this is the world has become a village in so many ways. And the impact, the footprint of American culture, as well as the commercialization of every experience, means that Halloween, my neighbors right here in London, I live in Southeast London, my neighbors have had Halloween spooky things up for weeks on end. And yeah, it's all over. It's all over. Everyone's doing it. There you
And that's
go.
also something about the power of American culture.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's technology, it's American culture, it's pop culture, it's the zeitgeist. Everybody wants to imitate things they see online.
Yes.
Despite grave warnings, dam fails and hundreds die in Nigeria, a flood after years of errors. And major Vatican meeting shelves women's issues, demands grow louder for greater equity for women. Why not me? Look at that. And citing a fiscal deterioration in France, Moody's downgrades its outlook. Let's see. Fight to live didn't end when they fled Gaza. Cancer patients carry war's burden to Jordan. Imagine, just life for everyday people in Gaza, and then add the complication of being a cancer patient. It's very sad to see what is happening there. In deciding whether to retaliate, Iran faces a dilemma and a very nervous night in Iran, and in the morning, some hope. It was very targeted, I believe. Who knows? Israel's shadow war enters a new phase of strife. Media groups outraged by deaths of journalists. Israel starts review of Lebanon airstrike. The wars that are taking place today in the Middle East, as you know, Rashmee, have been more dangerous. More people, more journalists have died in the 1 year since October 7th than died in the Vietnam War, and also died in World War II, which was, of course, had so many journalists die. So that tells you that this war is being prosecuted in a different way.
It's a
Hundreds of
terrible,
civilians. Go
terrible.
ahead. Go ahead.
No, it's a terrible toll. And in fact, actually, there's a shout out to really PBS's correspondent, Leila Molana Allen. I don't know if you've been watching her stuff. Ever since the strikes on Lebanon started, Leila Molana Allen has been doing such great work. And as a cohort of people have put together yet another protest, that it has been more than a year and 20 days, nearly 20 days, 19 days, since Israel started its attacks on Gaza. And non-Palestinian journalists have had no access. This is not the way to prosecute a war, and the world should not accept it. So yes, her work on what is happening, it really brings home the what's happening to ordinary people just where we are sitting. Suddenly my street could become a war zone. There could be. So it is quite, so thank you for bringing that up. It's really
Here
important.
are some comments that are coming in about Halloween. Jonathan says, I must say I miss the Halloween of my childhood in the 1950s and 60s when it was a minor children's holiday. And he lives in the East Village where there are a lot of parades and a lot of people dressed spooky things. And Pradnya is over Halloween plus Diwali. I think they call it Diwaloween, the thing that people are doing. And Sudha, Neil's mom, saying they also celebrate Halloween in India. When I spent time in India as a child or worked in India or went to college, there was no mention of Halloween, barely any mention of Valentine's Day. And now those are big, even political things, right? Valentine's Day has become a political thing in India. And Pradnya says, we lost another colleague at Doctors Without Borders this week. I salute Doctors Without Borders, other great organizations, and the doctors, the medical professionals who volunteered to go in there and have been telling us what's happening. There have been very important. Somebody died in Gaza this week. So folks, please tell us where you're watching from and share your take on the news. Look at this. Hundreds of civilians are killed in Sudanese villages as fighting surges. I had not seen that news. This is why a newspaper matters, the serendipity of what comes across your screen. And for Georgia, elections likely result in further push-pull over its future. I first saw this thinking it's about the state of Georgia, not the country of Georgia, Rashmee. So that was interesting. And the anti-immigration activist who organized a far-right rally in London is Tommy Robinson. His real name is Stephen Yaxley Lennon, turning himself in at a police station in Kent on Friday. By the way, speaking of immigrants and what's happening with immigration, one of the big stories to come out this weekend, which I'm sure you know about, is the story around what is happening with Elon Musk. Elon is from South Africa, like Peter Thiel and David Sachs, three people who grew up in as apartheid South Africa and are having a disproportionate influence in the United States. So Elon Musk, who has been railing against illegal immigration, has been found, a lot of us suspected this, that when he came to America, he was for a period of time in violation of this country's immigration policies. He was, in fact, an illegal alien. If you call it that, we don't even use those terms, but he was using that. So now we're going to push that back onto him. And he is such a low-grade moral person. Enemy of open borders, launched his career working illegally in the United States. What happened is that he came here for a PhD at Stanford. He decided he didn't want to do that, and he just started working. He just not going to class, start working. You cannot do that. Even if you're not paid, it doesn't matter. You cannot start anything that has any economic value, creating algorithms, building websites. You can't do any of that, and he did that. And just like we have seen questions about Melania Trump when she was not Melania Trump, and how she was able to navigate the immigration system. Here is Trump's biggest backer today, Elon Musk, and just absolutely outrageous. And he is spending tens of millions of dollars because he will benefit from a Trump presidency. Go ahead, Neil.
Well, I just want to bring up, Sri, since, I mean, we want to give credit where credit is due. The Washington Post broke this story about Elon Musk, but the Washington Post was also in the news this week for another story, their non-endorsement of Kamala Harris, or non-endorsement of anyone. Certainly, I wouldn't have expected them to support Donald Trump. But this certainly raised a lot of questions, a lot of concerns about the Washington Post decision-making. They've been endorsing candidates for almost 50 years, and they suddenly decide this year, even though they've endorsed local candidates, they decided not to endorse in the presidential election. So I wanted to put that out there. I was dumbfounded when I saw this. We've talked about this. There is too much at stake in this year's elections. Democracy literally hangs in the balance. Donald Trump winning would be cataclysmic. How could the Washington Post do this, Sri? What are your thoughts?
Thank you. I have some thoughts, and I know Rashmee does as well. So let me say one quick thing. you see a name on this. You see Will Lewis is the publisher and CEO of the Washington Post. He is a former Murdoch man. He is someone who was accused of the highest breaches of ethics in his time as a journalist and editor in the UK. And so he was imported to the States and eventually got this role. And there was so much turmoil when he was announced and all this stuff came out about him. He was part of the hacking scandal where they were hacking phones and things like that. He survived it, and now you're seeing what's happening. So to me, a couple of thoughts. First is that people are canceling their subscriptions in the tens of thousands. It's unheard of, unprecedented. People always say, I'll cancel, but a few dozen here and there. 60,000 was one count I saw. These may not be accurate, but we know people are posting that they're canceling. I have not canceled my digital subscription because everyday journalists there are the ones who will suffer, not Jeff Bezos, who is the owner and who is afraid of what will happen if Trump wins and what will happen to his Blue Origin, the space and other contracts that he needs and help of the government. So he's worried about that. And so to do this at this moment, Woodward and Bernstein had an excellent, the legendary Washington Post editors and reporters had an excellent post. They said, it is fair to decide not to do endorsements, no problem. But to do it 11 days before the election, this election, tells you there are other factors at play. And that's the issue here, not that they're not doing endorsements. A lot of papers don't do endorsements anymore. It's also confusing for the public. And by the way, they don't make that much of a difference. No one's going to read the Washington Post and say, okay, I'm going to now change my mind. I'm a Trump supporter. But to independents, to others, this just shows the value of this. And this is Carl Bernstein's thing. So we're just going to we respect the traditional independence of the editorial pages. And at the very end, the bottom of this, the last sentence that they have here is the most important. As you will see here, under Bezos' ownership, the Washington Post news operation has used its abundant resources to rigorously investigate the danger and damage a second Trump presidency would do, including this Elon Musk story. But what makes this decision even more surprising and disappointing is this, especially this late in the electoral process. Over to you, Rashmee, and I'm not going to make you responsible for sending us this Brit.
I know, not a very good export from Britain, clearly. Maybe this is where an import restriction or a tariff, which is basically a tax, Donald Trump wants, might have been a good idea. No, I'm so glad you said that, Sri, that actually, and that you quoted Bernstein Woodward, that it doesn't really matter any longer whether or not a newspaper endorses a political candidate. And indeed, there have been there was a slew of American newspapers back in 2022. I think it was the New York Daily Post and the Chicago Tribune and Orlando Times or Sentinel or something. There were about 6 of them that said we're not going to do presidential endorsements or any political endorsements. So at that time they did it, and that was just fine. I think 11 days before the election, yes, definitely, it does send a very strong message. It shows that people are hedging their bets and they want to please, they want to run with the hounds and hunt with the hare. That's the way it works. I did actually see a very interesting thing. A lot of people saying don't cancel your Washington Post subscription, cancel your Amazon Prime subscription. Because that's where it really affects Jeff Bezos. But I think at bottom, what does it tell us? This is the way it works in the real world. If you have got your interests at heart, there are only permanent interests. There are no permanent values for some. So should we be surprised that we are living in a period in which big business, IT, the media, the industry is supporting something that, or at least not coming down heavily on the side of what we know to be a normal, straight up and down law and order ticket. That's just the way it is. What
To
do you
your point, another commentary on that in terms of the canceling subscriptions,
ah
it impacts the staff at the paper. People who don't agree with the decision, people who work there who do good journalism. So I'm not making a comment, a stand in terms of whether you should or should not cancel it, but I definitely saw some good commentary from reporters who said, you know, even like someone was tweeting their mom canceled their subscription, and she asked them, you know, please reconsider because of the impact it's going to have on you know her daughter's career.
By the way, that particular reporter and that mom, the reporter covers abortion for the Washington Post, and she's the one who shared that thread. So it was really something. And the that was a little on the nose that the reporter who covers abortion is worried, because now Bezos can turn around and say, already the Washington Post was on shaky ground this last cycle because they've lost half their subscribers since the peak of the anti-Trump days. But now it's different, and now we're seeing those immediate cancellations. I will say another thing about folks who are kind of saying this doesn't matter, it's not important. We saw the LA Times pull this stunt as well, where the owner said no endorsement, again, very late in the process. Then his daughter came out and said it's because Kamala Harris and her stance with support of Israel. But then her father came out and said, no, his daughter just saying that because he doesn't want to be on the record, opposing Israel either. So even this is the thing to worry about, folks, that if the billionaires who have the resources to live anywhere in the world, who have unlimited money, are feeling scared, then how will the everyday people who will have to stand up to Trump, what will they do? And everyone who's listening, who chooses their comfort with taxes above everything else, they are going to learn a hard lesson if she loses. But first let me read Naomi's comment. She says, it enrages her as a journalist, and the Guardian from the UK is the only paper I respect for its not for sale ethos and excellent reporting, feature writing. That's a paper worth subscribing to, as I have. And this is Carolyn Kitchener explaining this heartbreaking call with her mother. I understand why she did it. I asked her to reconsider. To anyone who has canceled or is thinking about canceling, here's what I said. Post reporters had no part in this decision, and when you cancel, you're hurting us, not our owner. So you get this. And she is, if you click on her bio, you will see she covers abortion for the Washington Post. And follow her and support her as well if you can. Carolyn Kitchener.
In fact, actually, if I could also say that the Washington Post is continuing to do on its news pages, it's doing some great work. There's just, I think today I saw, they've got this survey that they're writing about, which interviewed 1,000 people, gave them several dozen policies of both candidates without actually putting a name on them. And by a landslide, using their words, Kamala Harris's policies won in that blind survey. So, they're doing their bit. It's just a non-endorsement, a very pointed non-endorsement. Yeah.
And here's Kaveri, the great Irish Indian writer. Indian Irish? I'm not sure what is the right. I haven't thought about it enough, Kaveri. I'm sorry. Novelist who says Murdoch is singularly responsible for stoking the worst of our hateful selves around the world. There was this amazing moment, Rashmee, on Fox News where they were talking about how much more divided America is than ever before. And they were wondering why that changed starting in the mid-90s. Well, there's one answer. One new network was born in the mid-90s, and that was Fox News. So the fact that they don't know their own role in all of this, or they don't want to acknowledge, is amusing. And we have to laugh at some of this, because if we don't laugh, we'll be just crying all the time. And so this is where we've gotten to. We used to say there are people who are low information voters. You remember that term?
Yeah.
We used it on low information countries. But now we have people with high information who are deciding that I don't want to vote for a woman. I don't want to vote for a black woman. Those are the kinds of things that they know what can be done. And I recommend, by the way, a really old book to people trying to understand Americans. It's a book called What's the Matter with Kansas? And it talks about why poor people in Kansas and other places will vote against their own best interests because of the culture wars, because of guns, because of abortion, all of these things. They've been convinced by the billionaires that the problem is the immigrants, and that you're going to be rich like me if you just follow and let me do whatever I want. And that's the fundamental lie that has resulted in the country we're in now. And Jonathan says both the LA Times and the Washington Post are now off his media list. And everybody has a way to do this. And the Post Affair renders its tagline ironic: democracy dies in darkness. That's what I posted as well. But look at the bravery of Anne, the amazing cartoonist there, Anne Talnays, who said democracy dies in darkness, and just painted this. It's heartbreaking that this is at the Washington Post and they still have it: democracy dies in darkness. And that's where we are. Let's go to some more comments. Ron Thomas says the non-endorsement is an endorsement of Donald Trump. It is that simple, and people don't understand that. Rose Horowitz says, good morning from a beautiful day in Connecticut. Here's a quote from Michelle Obama's terrific speech yesterday at a Harris rally in Kalamazoo. If we don't get this election right, as we as women will be the collateral damage. And lots of people are talking directly to women and to men, to saying, you always say you want to support your daughters, your mothers, your sisters, your aunts. Here's your chance. And don't lose this opportunity. By the way, everyone, watch that Michelle Obama speech. It's about 7-8 minutes. It's a masterclass in communication. It's the highest level of speaking, but also obviously of writing. And Rashmee, who teaches writing among other things, knows the value of a good story, and she does it beautifully. Everyone will be studying that speech in years to come.
I mean,
Let's
I think. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No.
Yeah, I think it was quite interesting, the fact that Michelle Obama felt that she had to talk about graphic details about being a woman, the physical details of being a woman, just to impress upon people that, we're at a crunch point, or that a lot will change. So I think it shows the situation, the gravity of the situation, that she had to speak like that.
And that's where we are today. The guardrails have failed. It's now down to us. Jamel Bowie. Neil, this is a good moment maybe to tell everybody about our upcoming shows. One of the things I want to tell you is that we are building live coverage, election specials that we're doing on the Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday of election week. And we'll be live on the air multiple times on election day, doing stories. We're going to be working with Scroll.in, the big independent publication. It's small but important independent publication out of India that has a global presence. And we will also be doing a special episode for the Indian Express, a live episode at 11 p.m. on election night. So there's a lot of coverage we're going to do, and we're going to have our guest from last week, Shauna Presley Vircher, is going to join us for a special edition of the Read Along on Wednesday morning to just read the headlines and just see what the coverage is like. And Rashmee, I'm going to put you on the spot. If you happen to have time and want to join us, we can make that a global conversation. You'll be awake. You may not be awake for the 11 p.m., but in the morning, if you want to just join us around 8:30, just come for a little while. Tell us what the mood is in the UK, what you see in the headlines. We'd love to have you. This is what you get, Rashmee, that you give us a little bit of time and then we take a mile. As you can
What
see.
a great conversation, though.
Thank you. So here's Donald Trump says he will win, and this is what he will do. Believe him is the cover of Sunday Opinion. Sunday Styles we looked at a little bit earlier. This is the king of couture. This is the New York Times for kids. Everyone should, if you have children in your lives, your neighbors, your own children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews, go to NYTReadalong on digimentors.group and download the free PDF. You only get this at the New York Times Read Along website on digimentors.group. This is by arrangement with the New York Times. And by the way, I should say something, Rashmee. A lot of people have been critical of the New York Times and how it has framed certain stories. This goes back to 2016 and more. And we are not endorsing the New York Times by doing this. We critique the stories. We talk about them, just as you did about that headline earlier in the show. We do this because we believe in newspapers, and we've done lots of other newspapers. I just happen to live in New York and get the New York Times in print like this. So that's why we're doing this. We have no connection to the New York Times apart from these PDFs that
Right.
the editors who make it give us. This has
I mean,
nothing to do with the business side. Yeah, go ahead.
it's so true that, in fact, there was a searing headline that I remember reading in another Substack newsletter. Well, it wasn't a Substack, it was a different person's newsletter. Very seasoned journalist saying, and I'm just quoting the headline, I'm not saying that this is my opinion. They said, the New York Times is ready for fascism. Are you? And
Oh my
this
God.
was, as you said, Shri, this is a criticism of the fact that the New York Times has explicitly said that it is not our job to keep pointing out the flaws or the danger to democracy aspect of Donald Trump. Now, I think there are 2 or 3 aspects here, as both a journalist and a journalism lecturer, I would say, that arise. This is the whole point about whether journalism is about activism, is it about engagement, or is it about observation? And you, as a Columbia J School professor, know that so well. So I think you're seeing it play out in real time. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. You are so right. And a lot of the criticism is about the editorial pages and how
Yes.
things are framed and how they're put online and both sidesing things. But you can see that those same editorial pages are now doing this and
Yes.
are endorsing Harris. But they will say that that's okay. But that's the point. That why do that first part when your own stories tell us the second part,
Though I
and
will
that's what's good.
So I will say, Shri, that there was a story, the one in which when Donald Trump was talking some absolute nonsense somewhere, and the reporting from the field, and this is on the news pages, not the views pages, it downplayed it. It did not, it used euphemisms rather than reporting it accurately as what it was. So it's not that the New York Times is not being accurate. I don't think it's rounding it out in quite that way. I think, that is the criticism.
Yep. And here it is. Take Trump at his word. All the president minions, Trump hangers on who would shape America, including this horrible, horrible man. I'm very proud that I wrote in my Substack in 2018. I said Elon Musk should get off Twitter because it's a danger to him and to the public, not knowing he was going to buy Twitter. And by the way, I admit I was wrong. I thought, what a waste spending $44 billion. In fact, he bought it to buy the presidency. It's in fact a bargain, $44 billion for a man who has 270 plus billion dollars. It's nothing. And so it was a brilliant purchase by him, not a stupid purchase, and that was my mistake.
In fact, today, the New York Times morning newsletter has got a fantastic interview with Lulu Garcia Navarro, NPR's, and John Fetterman, the junior senator for Pennsylvania. And in that, he has described, he said, these are the words he's used, fantastic words. He says, he's a Democrat, and he says, look, most endorsements don't matter. This endorsement by Elon Musk of Donald Trump, it does matter. And I think you have got it, that this is absolutely true. It's not just the Twitter, it is the 75 million in the American PAC. It is the fact that you're giving, possibly with dubious legality, $1 million to anyone who signs that petition or accepts that the First and Second Amendments are important to you in your life. It is so much. And people, Fetterman has described how senators, when Elon Musk came, they were oohing and eyeing and saying, I want 2 minutes. He said, the ordinary person, what will they say when they see Elon Musk there? So I think, I don't know, that it was alarming to me, and he's a Harris supporter, but
Yeah. And we are going to see Elon, like the deplorables are going to come back in such a strong way. And Hillary Clinton had described them accurately that way and got in trouble for saying it. But we're going to go back, and you can imagine Robert F. Kennedy, one of the worst humans in the world, is going to be in charge of Health and Human Services, most likely, and he will want to get rid of that department. We're going to have someone who is barely literate going to be in charge of the education department, which they want to kill, the commerce department, which they want to kill. Someone like Elon will be in charge of one of those departments. We've also seen the big reporting this week that he's in constant touch with Vladimir Putin. And both Trump and Elon are talking to America's biggest enemy, the first dictator since World War II to invade another country like this. We've had lots of civil wars where land is exchanged, etc., but not since World War II has a country been invaded in this fashion, and without any provocation, unlike what happened in Kuwait, as we know, or in Iraq, and all of those things. And those are wrong as well. And I will just say, because you're here, Rashmee, I'll just show very quickly. This is the cover. They went for something different on the cover. This is about cheerleading in America. Inside the dazzling, acrobatic, expensive, and shockingly dangerous world of American cheerleading, and the single company that dominates it. It's called Cheer Inc. So we're going to stop our New York Times camera so that we can talk and start to wrap up here, because we're going to switch to Neil by himself, is going to have so much fun with the New York Times for Kids. We're going to give you back your Sunday. But I want to say a couple of things to our international audience and to our friends and family who are saying there's no difference between them. I was with a very senior academic yesterday who was saying they're both evil, so it doesn't matter. And there's a brilliant video op-ed by a senior journalist from Singapore that was recorded during when Biden was the candidate this time. And he said, no matter if it's Trump or Biden or Harris, it doesn't matter. America's still going to be the imperialist, capitalist troublemaker in the world. It's going to do damage to the world. Absolutely true. But to say the damage that America can do to the world will be exactly the same are the same people who said that there's no difference between George W. Bush and Al Gore. Ask the Iraqis. That there's no difference between John Edwards and John Kerry and George W. Bush. The people who said there's no difference between Hillary and with Donald Trump, they're all capitalists, they're all evil, etc. So to the foreigners, to the world, to people who are sharing these things on WhatsApp, know that yes, there are policy problems with Harris as there are with anybody. But to think that this is exactly the same is wrong. And we know this. This is not like before. We know there is a difference. And for you to sit on the sidelines or encourage your cousins in America to vote in a particular way is a disservice to the world. While America has so many problems and inflicts its problems in the world, we still need to know that there is a degree of difference. And in this case, it's a big set of degrees. So what we're going to do is let Rashmee catch her breath for a moment. She's going to come back and give us some more thoughts. And before we do that, I'm going to bring Neil to come back on the show and talk about what we have coming up. Neil, another fantastic show. This is the New York Times Read Along. And I love it when we bring in someone who is a journalism expert, because they are able to critique and annotate the newspaper in a way that our other great guests who are not journalists can't do. And they bring their own perspective, of course. Neil.
Absolutely. And when we bring Rashmee back, we're going to ask her two questions. One, we're just going to ask her to reflect back on her newsletter and podcast this week, those books. And we're going to ask her to separately reflect on the U.S. elections as someone who is based in London but is a Florida voter. Sri, this is something, our show has evolved over the years. This is the 9th year that you've been doing the show. I joined you about 7 years ago. And I am just thrilled, in terms of where we've gone, not just in terms of the production value and the show itself, but where we're going in terms of the commentary and the politics of it, getting off the sidelines and really getting involved this year, not just on this show, but with the other shows that we're producing. And as you mentioned, over the next several days, we're going to have several election specials. We'll be sharing all of the details, but 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday night, Monday night, and Tuesday night of the election. We'll be doing a special on Tuesday at noon on Election Day. We'll be doing an 11 p.m. special. And then if the world has not collapsed, Wednesday morning, 8:30 to 10 a.m., we'll do a special Wednesday New York Times read-along to look at the coverage. But we have such amazing comments. Dr. Tachi, the interesting thing is this concept has never worked for poor and working class people. This system thrives by having an underclass, and by having the underclass participate in their own oppression. Absolutely. Mary Curtis, the Washington humor columnist, Alexandra Petrie, has a terrific column. She endorses Harris since her paper did not. Mary Curtis, thank you so much for all that you've contributed to our show. And Covery, that's why I keep coming back to listen. The commentary educates. Next week, we have a very special guest, our last show before the elections, Jason Johnson from MSNBC, the political contributor there. And he's also, Sri, you'll relate to this. He's an associate professor of politics and journalism at Morgan State University and the politics editor at theroot.com. He has agreed to join us. He's actually doing an MSNBC show at 9 p.m. the night before, and is going to join us Sunday morning. So we're looking forward to that. That's going to be November 3rd, next weekend. So many incredible guests that we've had. So in the last few weeks, Subodh Chandra, the civil rights lawyer in Cleveland who filed charges against Trump and Vance on the comments he made on the Haitian community. Shauna Vircher, who you mentioned, is going to be joining us Wednesday morning. Her political commentary.
We just booked Rashmee too.
Rashmee said yes. That's great. So we're like Rashmee. We'll see when she comes back on, Sri. But Rashmee as well. And we're going to have incredible folks. Mary, we'll be reaching out to you to see if you're available for any of these shows as well. I do want to, again, thank you, Sri, for everything you've done. This read-along community, this read-along family has been such an important part of our lives for so long, and it's just going to continue to be so. So thank you for everything you've done to nurture that and move that forward. Jonathan says, great and provocative show. Thank you. So with that, let's bring back Rashmee Roshan Lall for her final comments. Rashmee, what a great show. Thank you so much.
Well, it was a great pleasure. Absolute joy to have a chat on a Sunday morning for you, afternoon for me. You asked me to reflect on this week, those books. It is a very small venture with a big agenda. And we look at big stories, and we look at books that are bigger than ourselves, and writers that have imaginations that are all-encompassing, sometimes it feels. I do it because it is truly a labor of love, and it is a passion with me. And I just want to promote the words and the stories and the context that is given. I want to give it to you, give it to anyone who wants to know about these things. Why is the world the way it is? What joins us? What doesn't? So that's basically this week, those books.
Thank you so much for bringing this week those books to the world. And everyone, go to Substack and search for This Week Those Books. It'll pop right up. Or go to her website, rashmee.com. She also does work on Medium. She does the podcast. She's very active. And this is one of the things that we say, is that you have to be in the arena to help people understand what it is that the point of view that you want people to get, the education you want them to get. So we are very grateful to you for that. And then just a final thought from you on the state of the election. You're a Florida voter, even though you live in London. Talk to us about that, and we'll let you go.
Well, I did vote a few weeks ago, and I received an email back because our people in Sarasota, where I vote, they are excellent, very efficient officials, and the department, the election machinery is It runs like clockwork. And they sent a confirmation that they received it. I just want to say that I think I would like to just go back to the question that Michelle Obama asked yesterday in Michigan, and when she said that why is the election even so close? And I think for this, I feel that I do have to quote, sadly, Donald Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, when he had once written for The Atlantic that Trump is cultural heroin. And, the hard choice, I think, the hard choice of civic virtue and being absolutely straight up and down with our expectations and what happens when they are sometimes dashed or they aren't fully met. This will never, ever be able to match that rush that is provided by the darker angels that are summoned up by Donald Trump. And so it is a salutary lesson that we are watching it happen, and we know we are forearmed by history. We know what happens from history, but we still cannot make it stop rhyming. History doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes sometimes, and we cannot make it stop rhyming. We cannot stop that poem, that dark poem. So there you
Wow,
go.
what a way to, I was saying you were giving me a lot of hope because you were optimistic, but here you are sharing things that are so important. Let's just quickly look at some of the comments. Naomi says the Washington Post editorial cartoon eviscerated its cowardly non-commitment. Ron says that it's a master class each week. Thank you so much, Ron from Dubai. Jonathan says this is a great and provocative show. Dr. Tachi, he says, I used to teach at Morgan State, which is the a place where Professor Johnson, who will be our guest next week, will be joining us from. Mary C. Curtis says, happy birthday for me tomorrow. Her son's birthday is today. Thank you, Mary. And Rose says, what a great show. I look forward to checking out Rashmee's podcast. And everyone, check out Rose's great work online, including Women to Follow. And Lotte says, such wonderful conversation, learned a lot. Now I'm ready for the week ahead. Thank you. That's exactly what we want to do. And Lotte is from Bhutan. And we're now going to switch in just a moment. So Rashmee, we'll let you go. Thank you very much. Everyone check out this week those books and check out Rashmee.com. We are very grateful to you, Rashmee. So
And happy birthday for tomorrow, Shri.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate it. And folks, that was Rashmee. Check out all the great stuff she's doing. It is so powerful. And we're so glad that we were able to bring her to you on the show. So now we're going to do something interesting. I want everyone who has a child in their life, neighbors, kids, grandchildren, children, nieces, nephews, etc., go to digimentors.group and get the Election Day episode or issue of New York Times for Kids. This is aimed at 9 to 14-year-olds. And we are going to do a special read along, just Neil. And I'm hoping that next month we'll have a special guest who he will tell us about if he can convince that special guest to join us. But anyway, this is available only to print subscribers and people who are fans of the Digimentors New York Times read along. So go to digimentors.group, look for the New York Times button, New York Times read along, and then click on Rashmee's face and our conversation there, and you can download this PDF. Keep them. They will be useful to teach your children all about politics and other issues. It's a great, great service, and I'm so happy we can do this. And with that, we are going to hand this over to Neil to tell us about the New York Times read along. He's going to do this for about 15, 20 minutes, and we will talk to you again. Neil, thank you very much, and everybody, thank you, and goodbye, everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sri. We're going to do a special on the New York Times, excuse me, New York Times for Kids, to take a deeper dive on that. And I hope you stay and take a close look. We're really looking forward to it. So here is again the cover for the New York Times for Kids, and they have an election night bingo, which is really interesting. So let's take a look. I'm going to switch to the New York Times camera and put that on, and we will start that show. So the New York Times election special, again, The editor's note, this section should not be read by kids. That's what they have right at the very top. But this is your guide to the big day. Election night bingo, the Electoral College explained. Adults need to understand the Electoral College as well, don't they? Can presidential candidates be cool? Kids put politicians in the hot seat. Three ways kids are getting involved. What office should you run for? Definitely want to get kids involved in politics. How to vote from space. It's almost like being an overseas voter, I guess, but even more so. And as a reminder, the PDF for New York Times for Kids is available on our website. Please go to digimentors.group/NYTReadalong and look for Rashmee's show, and you'll find it. So you see the other topics here. My family is fighting about politics, a brief history of messy elections. Class presidents share their secrets. And so that's the full page here. Let's take a look inside. First off, I want to note the design, the red, white, and blue. It's almost like an old-timey look, which is interesting. So there's certain design elements there. And Dr. Tachi, thank you for staying. Appreciate it. Hopefully folks will enjoy this look at the New York Times for Kids. Welcome to the election issue. And then there's a Meet the Candidates. They do a quick look. One of these people will be your next president, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. They have a section here, can't vote, no problem. 3 ways teens are getting involved. And I will make a quick plug here. I don't have the video to show, but Sri's daughter, Durga, is going to be featured in a documentary. She's certainly old enough to vote. She's a college student, but it focuses on her efforts encouraging people to vote. So definitely look for that, and we'll share that with folks, of course, once those links are out. Grab a snack, do your laundry, cast a ballot inside 5 of America's strangest polling places. It's interesting. The city of Chicago doesn't own a building in the neighborhood of Chicago Lawn, so Wash Smart Laundry is helping out by tucking polling booths among the washers and dryers. That's interesting. That's one example. Here's a thing. How old should you be to vote? There's a question, and they have an answer from an 11-year-old. I think people should be allowed to vote when they are 22, because I feel that's when your brain fully develops, and you don't want to have people with an underdeveloped brain choosing who should lead the country. That is certainly an interesting thought. And I think actually brains develop later than that, if I'm not mistaken. What else do we have here? Stunts, memes, and saxophones. Campaigns work hard to make candidates seem cool. Another answer to the how old should you be to vote? You should have to be 7 to vote, because I'm 7 and I should have the right, and because that's when you can get your ears pierced. That is an interesting approach. We have, so this is this article about being cool. The year was 2008. The presidential candidate Barack Obama was preparing to make a television history. The cameras rolled and declared, "Do you smell what Barack is cooking?" That's a play on The Rock, a Dwayne Johnson, who was a wrestler at the time. But with the saxophone, I remember when Bill Clinton played the saxophone on Arsenio Hall. Your school, your say. The other elections you should be paying attention to. Absolutely. What do school boards do? Hiring and firing school officials, where the money goes, vacation days. Those are all decisions that are made at the local level. Now here's a nice piece. Your guide to the big day. It's weird. It's confusing. It's the Electoral College. Absolutely. And I'll say that my daughter, Emily, 11-year-old, she had a session. Her Girl Scouts met with a county supervisor, and her question that she wanted to ask was, why do you do the Electoral College? Why is it actually there? A lot of people ask that question. Why is it still in place? But there's an Electoral College map and a whole explanation of how that works. Now, if we get to the centerfold, this is what we've been waiting for. And I think that adults may want to check this out for election night. Election night bingo, where the popular vote is all the votes cast by U.S. citizens. Because of the way elections work here, it's possible for a candidate to win the popular vote and lose the election. Read more about that. If there's a flip, when a state that voted for one party in the last election votes for the other party, it's called flipping. Exit polls, Nevada recount. There's a lot to dig into with this, and a lot to focus on. Precinct over here. States are divided into precincts or voting districts. The votes from each precinct are added together to make the state's total. So the instructions on election night: tune in to the news and set a timer for 30 minutes. Scan the terms on the board and then keep your eyes and ears open. When you read or hear one of them, check it off the board and read the explanation. If you've marked your 4 words in a row before the timer goes off, you get a bingo and you win. You're free to resume your night, unless, of course, you're caught up in all the excitement. Persuade your parents to let you stay up late. You're watching Democracy in Action. See how many squares you can check off before calling it a night. And while you're at it, see if you can start filling in the electoral map. Who's the politics nerd now? I will say that this would be an interesting thing for anyone to do. If you only have the hard copy, you get one chance. But because the PDF is on our website, you could play multiple times. You could have multiple people play, which is cool. I would only say that given some past elections, if we don't know by midnight, maybe some kids should be going to sleep around then. The older kids could stay up, but I'm probably going to put a midnight sleep time on for Emily. She will have school the next day, and this is interesting. In Fairfax County, she's going to have early release on Thursday, Halloween. Friday is Diwali, or that's when they're celebrating Diwali, so she'll have Friday off. Monday is a professional work day. Tuesday is election day, so she'll be coming off a 5-day weekend. She'll need to get back to school on Wednesday, I'm sure. So let's check out what else they have here. The votes are in. Now what? This is always an important question, not just for kids. We might not know who won right away. Scenario 1, we know the winner on election night. Scenario 2, it takes a few days. Scenario 3, really close race, takes more than a few days. And then legal battles after the election. Famously, Gore v. Bush was decided by one vote. Clarence Thomas in the Supreme Court. You remember the hanging chads. Here's an article about family is fighting about politics, and what you can do about that, how you can handle that. Again, the PDF is on our website, digimentors.group/NYTReadalong. Here are some things, some statements from younger kids, really 11 through 15, from what I can tell, 8 as low as. Hey, politicians, listen up. Lower medical costs. Treat people like people. Make public transit safer. End gun violence. Create a trash pickup party. Bring on the bikes. I will make a point about gun violence. I was at a party last night talking with a friend who has a 7th grader. She was telling me about how he actually is assuming there's going to be a school shooting, and he's hoping that he's in science class when it happens, because the science class has bigger closets, easier to hide in. That is just incredible. That is what kids are thinking about. End gun violence from a 13-year-old. Create a trash pickup party from an 8-year-old. That's what our guest Rashmee Roshan Lall was doing in London this morning, a trash pickup party. See what else? We still have just a couple of pages to go. Kids ask, senators answer. This is an interesting section. I mean, this would be great for adults, right? How would you define the perfect country? And there's a response from Senator Peter Welch from Vermont. A question here: how do politicians come up with the bills and the language that they propose? Because they do not always seem to match with what regular citizens care about. And you have Senator LaFonza Butler of California offering an answer there. I want to be a teacher and I worry a lot about what I will earn. Why do we pay such a valuable profession so little? From a 16-year-old, Senator Patty Murray from Washington offering her thoughts. And I am sad about poor people. How are you helping end poverty? Senator Mike Rounds from South Dakota offering his answer, as well as Senator Tammy Duckworth from Illinois. These are, I think, worth reading. They should consider doing something like this in the main paper. Campaign tips from 4 class presidents, how to win an election. Something that a lot of kids will be interested in, including my daughter. Can Taylor Swift swing an election? How celebrity endorsements work. That's a really good explainer to check out. And then they used to be kids. Now they're in office. Politicians may seem like the most grown-ups there are. But once upon a time, they were kids just like you. And for many of them, the experiences they had back then inspire them to run for office and guide what they do once they're there. Interviews by Elise Craig with Andrea Romero, a New Mexico State representative, and Fixing What's Broken with Hillary Sheev, mayor of Reno, Nevada, Janet Nguyen, California State Senator, and Ian Kane, City Council President from Quincy, Massachusetts. We have which office should you run for? A little kind of play here in terms of starting from here, what you want to do. And then it ends up with either the leader, a team player, the judge, a number cruncher, or a rule enforcer. So it gives different options. And a last quote, how old should you be to vote? From a 13-year-old. Kids are smart enough to know what's going on in the world and what they want by age 16. There's no reason to wait until 18. It's important to get young people's opinions because it's our future. What happens in elections affects us. What an incredible special section. The New York Times for Kids is a print-only section that is in the last Sunday of the month. This one, of course, is timed with the elections. Some great content here. I certainly encourage you to find it on our website. And as Sri mentioned earlier, usually we can only keep it on our website till noon on Sunday, but the New York Times has allowed us to keep it online until Election Day. So we can keep promoting it and people have a longer chance to get a copy of it. So get a copy, download it, share it with your friends. You won't be disappointed. This is an exclusive for the New York Times Read Along. We are so thankful for the New York Times for letting us do this. Again, my name is Neil Parekh. I am the executive producer and occasional guest host of the Sunday New York Times Read Along. We've been looking at the New York Times for Kids special section. And just wanted to remind you again, the centerpiece is that election night bingo, which you should definitely check out. We, of course, will be live next week for several special events. We have our show next Sunday with Jason Johnson, who we put on screen earlier. He's a political contributor to MSNBC and an associate professor of politics and journalism at Morgan State University and the politics editor at The Root. We're definitely looking forward to having him join us. And as Sri mentioned, we're going to be doing several special election specials Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday before the election, or including Election Day at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Join us. We'll have additional shows. We'll be putting it on our website. We'll send it by email, and we hope you can join us. Again, thank you so much for spending your Sunday morning with us. We appreciate you giving the time, and we definitely look forward to seeing you again. I just want to put in Dr. Tachi's comment. Excellent show as usual. Thank you, Rashmee, Sri, Neil, and team. Kaveri saying thank you, Rashmee, Sri, and Neil. Absolutely. And Sri showed this earlier. Such a wonderful conversation. Learned a lot. Now I'm ready for the week ahead. So thank you, Lotte. Appreciate everyone who stayed for the New York Times for Kids special deep dive. We will see you next week at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Thank you, and make sure to go vote. Vote like our democracy depends on it, because it does.